This is El Camino Real de Tierra Adentro, the royal road to the interior lands. It was the official road from Spain, bringing the first colonists to New Mexico, beginning in 1598, 22 years before the Mayflower landed in Plymouth, Massachusetts. This emigrant trail brought thousands of Spanish and Mexican colonists to New Mexico until the arrival of the railroad in the late 1800s. The unique culture, history, and people of New Mexico trace their roots to the Camino Real. Though not used for over a century, remnants of the Camino Real, Indian pueblos, and other cultural sites along the trail are being preserved today. The towns and villages along the Rio Grande and the Camino Real are some of the oldest settlements in North America. El Camino Real is a National Historic Trail. The roughest and deadliest part of the Camino Real, which ran from Mexico City to Santa Fe, was the stretch between Las Cruces and Socorro, called Jornada del Muerto, or Journey of the Dead. A broad, flat valley with no water, grazing, or firewood, it offered no amenities to travelers for 90 miles. Caravans left the comparative ease of the Rio Grande River at points of rocks north of Las Cruces and prepared for a brutal 3-day march with little rest and no water. Why did the travelers leave the river and journey into the arid wasteland? For 100 miles the river was too difficult to follow, especially for livestock and wooden carts. Huge canyons led from the eastern and western mountains, creating gigantic ridges to climb and descend, one after the other. But while traveling along the Camino Real and the Jornada may have been a challenge for the first European visitors to New Mexico, for a hardy breed of people living in Sierra County, it became a way of life, a place to settle, a place to raise their families, a place to run their ranches, and a place to be home on the range. For there were bison here and antelope, and more than that, there was a good land, and with a certain kind of person, a certain tough kind of person, could make a living here. The small hamlet of Engle was the major railhead for Sierra County, New Mexico, for many, many years. Once larger than it is today, with depots and other buildings, today there isn't much left of the old settlement of Engle, except a few offices for the sprawling Armanderas Ranch and the Engle Community Center and Church, which provides a focal point for the community. In visiting the Engle area, you know that it takes a special kind of person to make a living here. We're about to meet some of those very special people.
As part of the New Mexico Centennial Celebration, we are interviewing longtime Sierra County residents. Today we will be speaking to Jack and Grace Cain. This is one of those couples you can't say one name without the other. Thank you for allowing us to speak with you today, and I'll start with questions. And if you want to add to what I ask, please do so. First, Jack, when and where were you born?
Belen, New Mexico.
And when?
February the 1st, 1927.
So that makes you how old?
An old timer.
Okay.
84, just the other day.
Okay. Who were your parents?
Margaret was my mother, and somewhere after I was born, my mother and father separated. Holt was his name. I don't know his first name. And he worked for the railroad as a track inspector. They never would tell me much about him, so I never knew anything about my father.
And then later you were
mother, she married John Cain, and they adopted me while I was in the service.
When did you first come to Sierra County?
Well, I guess the first time my grandparents were up at Fort, what's that little town?
Fort Sumner.
Fort Sumner, had come from Oklahoma. They came down here, and they came down, or had to be from Orlando, I guess. He took back, my grandfather did, because they raised me part of the time. And they had a house right there where the police station is now. They had a house they built there. He was a carpenter, contractor. And I was just a little tiny fellow then. And I'd go downtown, had an old white dog with me, and there by the Davis Flat Drug, there, that, if you remember, there was they call it a slough, but it was where the water run. Well, I fell off in that one time, that dog drug me out.
When did John and Margaret first come to Sierra County?
I don't know when he came, but it was quite early, because he ranched up in the Black Range and built his ranch up there, catching mavericks. And then they married, and we lived up there a couple of years before he traded with his brother and moved down here at Engle.
And they came. Why did they come here?
It was in '38, I think, because there's a picture over there being some of the kids.
And did they come to ranch?
Oh yeah, they moved the cattle from the ranch up there down here, because there by the dirt dam, some of you older timers, there was a corral right down there and that's where we spent one night, then brought them across the dam and out here at Engle.
Oh, and you brought them actually across the dam.
Oh yeah, it's the only way to get out of here. That's the only road.
That's interesting. Where did you go to school?
Well, the first year I boarded in Tier C, right there below, you know where the Dairy Queen is? Or not now, it's a bigger burger. On the other side of that hill, there's a stairway seat going clip. Mrs. Reed lived right there at the foot of that. I stayed with her 1 year, went to school, and then by the next year we'd moved out here, and I went to the Engle school the rest of the time.
When you were in Engle in school, how many teachers did you have?
Best I can remember, a lot of some black spots, was Winnie Rich, and Mrs. Morrison, and they moved to Silver City. And there was a younger teacher, and I don't remember her name.
And what were you taught? What subjects did you have?
I don't know, all these grade school subjects. I recessed more than I did anything else.
Reading, writing, and arithmetic?
Yeah.
Okay, then you went on to college. So where did you go to college?
Well, after I finished grade school, I went to Peacock Military Academy in San Antonio, Texas. That was the thing then, during the war and everything. And then I quit. In my sophomore year, I left the Peacock Military Academy and went to the Marine Corps. And there, nearly 3 years. Then I came back, too old to go to high school anymore, so I went on to college. And then went on to seminary after that.
And where was that?
College in Brownwood, Texas, and seminary in New Orleans. Baptist seminary down there.
And after you got through with college, I think you traveled all over everywhere, didn't you?
Not too much. We came back to Tier C. I didn't want to be a preacher in the South, so we came to Tier C until I got a church in Colorado. Pastored there 7 years in Colorado, 3 years in Montrose, and then came back in 67 to take over the ranch again. Been here ever since.
Okay, tell us about your Army service.
Marine Corps is the difference.
Your Marine service.
Well, I was, the war was still on when I went in, and we were after my training, we were on a troop ship headed for South Pacific, and we were between San Diego and the Hawaiian Islands when they signed the armistice. But it went on. Of course, they took us on. He went where they took it. And I spent my overseas time on Guam. And 'cause we were in a supply depot there, I ended up in the motor pool and mechanic.
Okay, when you returned to Sierra County, you came back to take over the ranch?
Yes,
And by then you had married Grace?
Yes, And we had 3 children.
And you found her, where did you find her?
Okay, in Howard Payne College. We found each other in Howard Payne College.
Okay. And do you remember what year that was?
1950.
1950, that's when we married.
Okay.
19
So you've been married,
61 years, just
61
about.
oh God. Okay, now Grace, we're going to put you on the hot seat. When and where were you born?
I was born in San Antonio, Texas, April 21st, 1931.
So your age is now?
I will be 80 in a few weeks.
Okay, good. Who were your parents?
My parents were Harry and Blanche Dreyer Ismond, and my mother came from the area around Victoria, Texas, and my dad was in San Antonio, Texas. And that's where I was born and raised most of the time.
Okay, we know that you went to Howard Payne at some point. Was there any other schools that you went to?
Well, I graduated from Thomas Edison High School in 1948, and I worked a year and went to San Antonio Junior College for that year, and then transferred to Howard Payne. And then after that, Jack and I were married, and so between classes I had 2 boys, and then we moved to New Orleans for Jack to go to the seminary, and I worked then in A.B. Dupuy Insurance Company for a couple of years, and then Ruth came along, and after that we moved to Colorado, and I had enough education that I could begin teaching school there. And then I'd teach school in the regular school year and then go to summer school every year until I received my degree.
In education?
Mm-hmm.
Your degree was in education. The question is, when and why did you first come to Sierra County? Well, we kind of know that. Jack found you and brought you here.
Well, the first time that I remember ever seeing the ranch was in 1950, and it was after we had married. And when we got to the top of the hill, Jack stopped and he says, "Now this is the ranch," and he told me to look, and just about everywhere where I looked, that was part of the ranch. I don't know if he was trying to impress me or not, but anyway, that was...
What did you think after coming from Colorado? What did you think of
Well,
this?
this was right after Texas.
Oh, okay.
And well, I mean, it was a vast expanse, and of course we had traveled all through West Texas, and I had seen how desolate it was, so it wasn't really a big surprise to me. And I was thinking,
You didn't tell him, "Take me back, I don't want to be here."
No, I've been pretty good about wherever he needed to go. That was where I went.
He was a faithful, I guess you say, pastor's wife. Wherever the preacher goes, the preacher's wife goes too,
Right.
whether she likes it or not.
Okay, Jack, back to you. What was in Engle the first time that you can remember seeing it?
Well, they had the general store there, which was where the long building is there now. It's one house now. But they had living quarters, they had a garage in the back, and they had a bar, and then they had a grocery store. All that in that one long building with a long porch out front, cement porch with a roof on it, and open otherwise. And that was about what was going on. A few homes, several Spanish families lived there because they worked the railroad, because they had a section crew lived there at Engle at that time. Then they had the headquarters for the ranch.
Was the hotel still there when you?
No, the buildings were there, because I played in them, but they were just a shell with a roof on.
So it's changed.
Well, they've tore all that stuff down now.
Okay, ranching has changed probably as much as Engle has down through the years. Tell us how it's changed from when you first started ranching until today.
Well, of course, when I was here as a kid, you didn't have horse trailers. You had to ride to the end of the pasture, 3, 4, 5 miles, gather the cows and bring them back 4, 5, 10 miles. Now you load your trailer up, your horse trailer with horses, haul them to the far corner, and then drive them in from there. And now I'm to the point where I drive the truck back and set my feet up while they drive the cows back. That's how it's changed.
Okay, about the shipping.
Okay, when we first, of course, they did this before we moved back, but we were one of the last ranchers to ship out of Engle on railroad cars. They had pins and scale there, and then we got scaled after that when we went here, and then just started hauling everything out like trucks. We've been doing trucks ever since.
How often do you ship now?
Twice a year. Well, when we had our full herd, we usually shipped twice a year, except for culls. The last few years, we just had to take a trailer load of our own to Belen or to Deming, because we haven't had enough for a full, semi.
Load full. Where did you find your hands or your cowboys to do this rounding up and all this and that?
Well, right now it's family. Our kids on weekends come out and help us.
Didn't you used to have an agreement with all the other ranchers around?
Yeah, when we first come back, Ben and us and all the related, from the Buckhorn up there, all clear down to Lewis to the Point of Rocks, we'd pool our cattle and sell to one buyer, even though they dealt with us individually. He bought the whole bunch from all of us, and we'd share helping back and forth together and everything.
So, when you have a windmill go down or your well goes dry or the whatever, how do you get water to these cattle?
Well, right now we got a well down because it froze up during this freeze, and we opened all the gates and let the cows all come in here to water. And we've got one windmill right now that the red rod is broke. As soon as this weather, we get time, we're going to go up there and fix that. And then got pipelines to different troughs. And we have water pipes going now where it used to be you had to have individual windmills or dirt tanks, which don't stay full but part of the year.
Do you ever have to haul water?
Oh yeah. One year in the summertime, where the windmill is that we're talking about, it didn't blow enough. And we had our cattle up there, a lot of them, so we had to haul water every day up there to them.
Convince us that ranching is not for sissies.
Well, you got your regular routine of what you have to do, plus what breaks down. And that seems to be pretty common. There's always something broke down. Just for example, this last freeze we had last week, we had over 2 miles of pipeline froze, had to be replaced.
Well, there's surely something else that you could think of that you could tell us that would really impress us that it's not for sissies.
Well, the work's hard if ranch hand, and when you're not doing the cowboying, you're fixing fence, things like that, which is not any fun. But these cattle like to tear fences up. These orcs like to tear fences up. So we're repairing fences all the time.
Okay, there was one story that you told one time about rescuing this calf.
Oh, well, you go check the water holes, and where this one windmill is that we're talking about. We got used to get metal troughs. Well, they rust out so bad, and lately we've been using these big old tires that these mines use, 8 foot across. And this one tire is about 3 feet deep, plus 6 feet across. And the rim's cut out in the top. Well, a doggy calf had got in there. Went up there to check the water, and there he was in there. And I looked at him and I thought, well, look, old boy, it looks like I'm going to get in there with you to get you out. So I just took my shoes off, left my clothes on, but just bailed off in there. And I wrestled around with that thing for a long time. Finally got his hoofs up over the edge, but I couldn't lift him. He wouldn't help anymore. He already tired himself out trying to get out. So, and I never could get his hind end up over the rim. So I went out, backed the truck up, tied onto his front legs, and the rubber tire, was smooth enough that I pulled him out and got him out that way. But I just got in there with him. That's the only thing I could do.
And how old were you when you did this?
Well, that was about 10 years ago, I guess.
70.
Well, I think it was sooner than that. I think you were close to 80 when you were doing that.
No. It hadn't been too many years. Maybe not 10. We haven't had tires that long. I think 5 or 6 years ago.
And so you would have been close to 80.
Well, I was 75 probably.
Okay, when you were doing that.
Yeah.
To me, that's convincing that it's not work for sissies. If it's 75, you can pull a calf out. What do you like most about ranching?
Your independence. It's a way of life. You don't make any money at it, but you make a living. And you're your own boss. If you don't feel like working one day, you don't work. But it don't work still there. You don't go away. But if you don't feel like it one day, well, we'll do it tomorrow. Something has to be done that day, whether you like it or not.
What do you like least about ranching?
Goodness, I had never thought about that. I guess working fence. That's something you always got to do. It's boring. Last time I worked at the horse pasture, I had to drive some steel poles. We go to steel poles now. Well, at my age now, I can finally get it driven in a little ways if it isn't too hard or rocks. But then I can't lift that pole pile driver up. So I back this four-wheeler mule, we call it, up, get on in the bed of it, then I can lift the thing up over the top of the post. That's old age don't help when you get old.
Well, it didn't slow you down too much. As a rancher out here in this remote area, which to most people would be remote, very remote. To us, it's not. It's just out there. Probably some scary things have happened to you. I mean, things that just scared you so bad that you weren't sure you were going to see the light of day. Can you think of one that stands out?
I can think when we first moved back to the ranch. When I was a kid here, and I had to think back now when I was a teenager, is what all I remember from ranching to when we moved back when I was an adult years later. That when you rope something, cowboys tied on solid to the horn. So I tied on solid, and we were bringing some cows in. This yearling steer calf broke and started to weigh, and well, I'll just rope him. So I did. Caught him accidentally, I guess. And he circled me, and the rope was around my stomach. And he stopped, and the horse stopped. If either one of those had bolted, they'd just pull me in two, because I was tied on. Well, after that, I went and bought a breakaway. I never did tie on after it. Now they dally. Dally's the big deal now, but at that time they didn't dally. That was before this roping craze they got now.
Oh. Well, okay, the funniest thing that has ever happened to you, or something funny that you remember that stands out.
Well, I don't know what's funny or not when my horses would fall with me. I never rode broncs. That's one thing I stayed away from. But when you're running horse hard, trying to turn cows, sometime they'll fall with you. I've got a picture upstairs I want to show you one of my accidents and how pretty I was afterwards. But one time, I guess it's funny or providential, whatever you want to call it, we were gathering our heifers down below the house here. They broke and ran. And I was trying to cut them off, or they'd just scatter me all over the pasture again. And so, Lord, help me, help me. Well, all of a sudden they turned and started going the way I wanted them to. I don't think that's funny, but it's better than they all turn.
Grace, it's your turn again.
Okay.
You have taught school in Tiersey for many years, been a rancher's wife and a minister's wife. We pretty much know the duties of a school teacher, but you had to drive how many miles a day to and from?
It would be approximately 50 miles a day.
Did you miss school very often?
No, no.
Did anything ever happen to you while you were driving back and forth that you really sticks in your mind?
Probably one that does is it was parent-teacher conference day, and I was driving in, and every so often the car would just lose power and stop, and after I sat there a while I could start the car and go on. And here I am, approximately 30 minutes from town, out here, trying to get there in time for, I think it was a 7:30 appointment with one of the parents. So it took me longer time than that to get in, but it was amazing that I made it without the parents having to wait too long.
And we didn't have cell phones.
No, that was
no cell phones.
way before. And by the way, when we first moved here back from Colorado, we had no communication out here and came back with 3 teenagers. So that was quite something.
I bet you couldn't do that today.
Well, today we have cell phones. You know.
Well, yeah, that's true.
The only thing is we have to find a spot out here wherever we can use the cell phone. So it's different.
Okay, tell us about the duties of a ranch wife.
Number 1, be prepared at all times to be able to put a meal on the table. I'd say is probably number 1. Secondly, be sure that you have everything ready when all of the cowboys and cowgirls are ready to leave, and that they all have water and they all have snacks and so on before they leave. And I'd say those are probably 2 of the most important. And then encourage everybody.
And you have to take meals to them sometimes, don't you?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes.
Wherever they happen to be.
Yes, and they have to be, something that's portable and usually that they can fix eating with their hands rather than to sit down to a meal.
And not be surprised at anything that happens.
Oh, no. No.
Okay, the same question about being a minister's wife.
Well, number 1, learn to be in the background.
And you learned that well.
Okay. And secondly, encourage the minister. Also to be there to encourage the congregation, and to, when someone needs to talk, that you can spend time on the phone or with the person, letting them just talk. Those 2, 3 things, and also be a prayer partner.
Let me interject something here. One thing that she's good at, lately, last few years, my memory's not like it used to be. And I'll be preaching along there and go blank. I'd look at her and say, Grace, what am I trying to say? And she'd figure out what I was trying to say. We'd get back on and go on down the road.
Again, Convince us that being a rancher's wife is not a job of luxury and ease. You don't sit around and eat bonbons.
No, you're usually out cooking and making them. No, usually making biscuits or bread or.
At what time of day is this?
It can be anywhere where you get up from 3 or 3:30 in the morning to approximately 6 o'clock. Very seldom, as a rancher's wife, do you have the privilege of staying in bed after the sun rises at any time.
Or watching TV.
Oh, no. You have to do that and be in the kitchen.
You didn't have to ride or do any of that sort of thing.
I did when we
you
first
first came?
moved here. Yes, yes, and I did up until approximately 20 years ago. And then there were enough adult riders.
Enough kids.
Well, we still use kiddos. One of the neat privileges we have is to have 4 generations here, and I have had 4 generations getting ready to go out around my breakfast table.
Okay, for you, what was a scary moment for you?
Probably one of the biggest was one time when we were helping our neighbors down the way. That was the Bowmans, and my horse decided that he was going to lay down with me on him. And I could just see my leg getting crushed as he was getting ready to lay down. But probably that was one of the scariest times.
How did you manage to get off?
Well, I didn't have to get off after doing a little the spurring and pushing and so on. He stayed up, and I got him to walk away from the rest of the group and get him back into doing his job.
Okay, Jack, you have become known as the Country Rev. How did you get that name? How did that come about? The Country Rev.
Well, I'm not sure, but maybe one of the raid when we had we had a number of Mexican immigrants would come up here, you know, and work on the ranches, and the other people would travel. This is Padre. Well, they'd look at me and you, es esposa, no. Padre, no. Esposa. Oh, and I said, evangelical. Okay, that's all right. That's how I got to as Reverend.
The Rev, though, what about your teenagers? The teenagers.
Well, they call me Rev.
They called you Rev for short?
Yeah.
That's neat. Could you even begin to count how many marriages and funerals you have?
We were talking about that earlier. I've got cards for nearly all of the funerals. I didn't drag them out; they were stacked that high. But she thought it'd be around probably
at least 200 funerals, and approximately the same number of weddings, I'd say.
Yeah.
I would have guessed it more than that.
I see. Well, I'm glad you know what I forgot.
Yes, we were just looking at pictures of some of them. I don't remember that. Oh, yes.
I have a file that I go when I have a funeral coming up. I go through that file, I pick up different materials, and a lot of the ceremonies are in that file of people. Oh, I remember that person. Some of them go way back, and I performed there. Most of them have been country folks that aren't associated with churches, and a lot of them have been graveside. I had 2 funerals in the same day, graveside, at the opposite end of the county. One up at Dusty and one down at Cutter, same day.
Kept you busy and on the road.
Yeah.
Okay, tell us about the Engle Church, the history of it, and how it got started and where it is now.
Well, Grace wanted a vacation Bible school for the kids. We had a number of families in the communities had kids at that time. So she wanted a vacation Bible school. We did, and at the end of the Bible school, there was roping was just getting started back then. So everybody brought their horses, and and we had lunch. We had the Bible school commencement. And then we had lunch, and then they roped the rest of the afternoon. And that kind of started. After that, why don't we have church once a month too? And we'd have a roping as well. Well, the roping faded out when everybody started going roping. That's roping, team roping got started. I think not at here, but they're doing it everywhere. So instead of coming to church after that, a lot of them had to go follow that team roping thing. But we've had church on one Sunday a month since we started, and that's nearly 40 years now.
42.
42, okay.
42 years.
Now, we went in before we came out here, and boy, have you done a nice job on the inside of that church.
Well,
What was it to begin with, at the very beginning, when they first built it?
best we can figure out, it was a freight house where they
Okay.
hauled in freight. They had mining up in the Cavallos, and I think it was used for a freight because where the front doors are now, there was another one on the other side just like it. About wagon height and big old heavy, tall wagons, and we think that's what it was used for. Then, of course, there was a schoolhouse. I went to school there, and then now it's still now it's a community center, but it's also used for church.
I was just amazed at how nice it was in there. Not to mention all the dances they used to have there once a
You know,
month.
we haven't had a dance. The last one we had was 4-H dance, and that's when we had a 4-H club. But now it meets in Tier C, so we don't even have that.
Okay, for either of you, down through the years you have been involved in various organizations. Tell about some of them.
Well, I was one of the oldest board members of the New Mexico Farm and Livestock Bureau. I retired from just a year or two ago from that. A couple more men were there longer than I was. And then one of the things that I was proud of, that I, with several other of the local businessmen, we started the bank there across from the old post office as the First State Bank. We started that. I was board member there for a few years. I was proud of that venture.
And then you were on the school board.
Yeah, I served on there for a while. Back then, if your family was a teacher, you couldn't be on a school board. So when one of my daughter-in-laws was teaching, well, then I had to resign from that. Now you can be a superintendent and teach school, but back then you couldn't.
Well, how many lawsuits were filed against you while you were on the board?
I don't know, didn't know what a lawsuit was back then. People minded their own business back then. Let the school do its job.
That's great. Grace, can you think of a...
Well, let's see, I am one of the charter members of Chamisa Cowbells. Was at the very first meeting that we had, and it was in Miss Harding's house, which is in town. And I've been fairly active with them all these years. Of course, I've been a member of New Mexico Farm and Livestock Bureau, and through that I helped to get Ag in the Classroom started, and it is now a statewide program that is sponsored by New Mexico Farm and Livestock Bureau, by the New Mexico Beef Council, the cattle growers and cowbells, wool growers, dairy industry, the Cooperative Extension Service, and New Mexico State University. And they have a summer graduate program that we started there. Every summer you can get graduate credit, 3 hours for taking the course.
That job required a lot of traveling, didn't it?
Yes, it did. all over the state. And I had all of the older vehicles that the Cooperative Extension Service had, that most of the people didn't drive those vehicles anymore, and I did.
All right, you also were very, if you'll hold that up, if you were very instrumental, you belonged to the Historical Society.
Yes, we did.
And you and Jack were very instrumental in getting this Sierra County history book published,
Yes.
which has become almost a Bible to a lot of people. And you have no idea how valuable they have become. So you did a good thing there.
Thank you, thank you. Well, let me say that Bill Bueller was the one that got us interested in working in this. And one of the things that he said was, it'll only take about 6 months. And I think it took us 1.5 to 2 years to finally get this completed and put together. But it wasn't just ours, it was also all of the different people who interviewed different residents in Sierra County and who got all of this together. And the pictures and things that everyone had to scour around and find, and all of the interviews that was done. So
Well, I'm trying to remember, she was the head of the museum for a long time. What was her name?
Louise Walls?
no,
No.
Carolyn.
Oh, Carolyn Elkins.
Kate Tucker. She was the real editor. We'd get the material. But
Right.
she's the one that put all that together. She worked many hours editing all the stuff that we got together. We'd make speeches in different meetings, and we'd get different people to get their histories. Some of the most interesting ones, we couldn't get them to give their fan history. So we're missing some of the history that would have been valuable if some of their kids did some of it, but they couldn't get some of the old timers. I don't want my history.
Right. And then after it came out, they wished they had done it
Yeah.
because they didn't know that it was going to be so nice.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a very nice book. We reprinted it once.
That's what I heard.
In the 80s.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the same thing exactly. It's
Yeah.
just that.
Well, the first bunch almost sold out as fast as they unloaded them after
Yeah.
one day.
It took us a while to sell the last, but as soon as we sold the last one, then everybody
Oh,
come in
sure.
and wanted
One,
one.
yeah, naturally.
Either of you can answer, or both this. How do you think the spaceport will affect the Jornada and the way of life out here?
Well, I don't see a whole lot of help hurting the ranchers, except those right there next to it. If they do it like the White Sands Missile Range does, when they fire certain missiles, we have a contract and we just go to town, they pay us per diem. It may break down to that, because they said some of these, later on down the road now, some of these missiles are going to be shot straight up and they come straight down. They don't always come where they're supposed to. So they don't want people living close or there during that flight time. So for ranchers, we may have to evacuate. Now, people that live down there, I don't know what they're going to do with them. That'd be a lot of people to have to evacuate. But
Do you think it'll ever become a big tourist attraction?
they say it will, but I don't. You never know. People are funny. There's people come down there now from all over the country. We went to the dedication of and Grace was talking to some people from where?
From Sweden, and they were very interested in getting a spaceport in their area. And they were looking at some of the same type of land over there that was very sparsely populated.
I just have a lot of reservations about it. It probably will be just fantastic.
Well, if it is, it's going to be down the road. It's going to take a long time to build up to where it would be like Cape Canaveral is now. And the thing they built down there now, and that's runway, that's just kind of a thing for rich folks to play with and take a little trip up for 2 or 3 minutes and then come back down. And that'll wear off after a few years when people get tired of spending that kind of money, but,
In other words, we don't have to worry about it because we won't live long enough to.
but as far as the real space where they shoot rockets, when the government quits doing it, well, then it's gonna have to go private, and that might work, but that'll be down the road quite a ways.
I think that research might be the one area that sooner or later is going to, if it keeps going, that will be the answer to it.
But it's going to affect the people that live right there.
Right, yeah.
One rancher's house is not over a mile from the end of the runway. And that's going to be bad. So they're going to make you come over his house landing or come in to, when they leave, be right over his house.
Yeah. Right in his back door.
Yeah, that won't be any fun.
No.
It'll affect him more than it will us up here.
Yeah. Thank goodness you're far enough away.
Yeah.
Okay, you said you had 3 children. Please tell us their names and where they are.
Okay. Russell's our oldest, and he lives here on the ranch, and he's managing the ranch right now. Jack and I are no longer owners of the ranch. The 3 children are owners of the ranch.
We gave it to him, signed away.
And his wife Hazel and Russ do most of the labor here on the ranch now. And Robert, our second son, he and his wife Connie live south of town in the area where Gail Middleton developed on Las Palomas down there. And right now Robert's working in Albuquerque with the movie industry up there. And Connie is secretary at the high school. And Ruth, our daughter, is married to Sam Silva, and she's working in Dr. Felt's office, and Sam is one of the high school science teachers.
So how many grandkids do you have?
We have 6.
And how many greats?
7. The oldest one is 17, and the youngest one is 2.
Oh, how nice.
He's one of those team ropers.
The 17-year-old is, yes.
Are any of them going to become ranchers, do you think? Of your grandkids and great-grandkids?
I don't think so.
Oh,
I
dear.
might be wrong, but I don't think so. Probably the oldest one right now.
Corley might, it depends on, because his dad still ranches up at Dusty.
Oh.
And he helps up there, and then he helps us out here when he's not roping.
In between roping, so.
Yes.
Sherry, do you have any questions you want to ask them?
No.
Jay?
Oh, that's great.
Okay, Jack, Country Rev, you have earned your angel wings many, many times over, and you will probably never realize how much this county appreciates you. So thank you from all those many people who have called on you to perform countless wedding ceremonies, funeral services, and church services. You were always there when you were needed. Grace, you are the Country Rev's right hand. Behind every good man, there is a good woman. You have gone to all the weddings, funerals, and church services right along with Jack. You were just quietly there for support for whomever needed it. You too have earned your angel wings many, many times over. We greatly appreciate you and thank you for being there. And thank you for letting us come into your home and answer all of these questions.
We're glad to do it.
Oh, give me a home where the buffalo roam, where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy all day. Home, home on the range, where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy all day. Where where the air is so pure and the zephyr so free, the breeze is so balmy and light, that I would not exchange my home on the range for all of the city's bright lights. Home, home on the range, where the deer and the antelope play, where seldom is heard a discouraging word, and the skies are not cloudy